do? Okay. All right. We'll do the announcements, the joys and concerns. I'll begin with the people mentioned on the back for announcements. It says, among our people, prayers are extended to Colleen Adams, Bertha Anderson, Marcine Amick, John Brock, Audrey Eklund, Evelyn McKenna, Helen Parker, Paula Rissman, Orville Rogers, Maxine Schwartz, Dwayne Tombson, Dante Vigneroli, and Glennis Trail. Glennis Trail. Filling our pulpit today is Jerry David Spears, friend to Beverly Kretzinger, and employed by the Johnston Community School District, serving children at the Lawson Elementary School in Johnston. Jerry served the USA Peace Corps as an English teacher for 13 years in China, 2000 to 2013. Jerry's son and family live in Rapid City, South Dakota, and his daughter and family live in Sheridan, Wyoming. He has 8 grandchildren, and many here and also in China who just call him Jerry Dad or Grandpa. Thank you for allowing, he says, thank you for allowing me to share some of my experiences with you today. God bless. I asked, does anyone have someone that you would like for us to pray for? It's a concern, or do you have something wonderful that's happened to you that you want to share? Just speak up. Don't be afraid. Nothing. It's been a quiet week. Okay. You want to stand for the call to worship? It's a psalm from Psalm 139. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me.
You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar.
You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways.
Before a word is on my tongue, Lord, you know it completely.
You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me.
Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain.
Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts.
See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way of your presence.
Okay, now we're going to sing Just a Closer Walk with Thee. Probably some of you can sing it by heart. Number 6 in your book. The call to confession. Trusting in God's mercy and kindness toward us, let us confess before God and before each other. There never seems to be enough time to do all the things that are demanded of us. Schedules become crowded. We live by the clock. We think we are ready for all events that will come our way, but we are rarely ready for you.
We'd like you to come to us at the planned time so that
we can think. Forgive us, Lord, for trying to make you a scheduled event. We have moved you to a time on our weekly calendars, yet you are an eternal God who has always loved us and been ready to receive us. Help us to learn that with you as our foundation, we can handle anything that comes our way. With you as our focus, all things pale in comparison. Let us look at the priorities in our lives and see where we have placed service to you. Amen. The assurance of pardon. In the deepest darkness, in the times when all seems lost, we are not lost to God. God calls us to be ready for God's new kingdom. In all this, God is with us. Okay, we'll do the passing of the peace. Please greet each other in the usual way. Verse 1 and 3. We're doing song number 42, Tell Me the Old Story, and we're just doing verses 1 and 3.
Here we go. Good morning. I'm Jerry Spees, and if you would like to have a better chance to hear everything, I would like to invite you to come up a little closer, especially now the children can come up. We're going to have a children's time. So if everybody else would just like to move a little bit closer, that way we could hear very much better. Okay? You're welcome. You're welcome to move forward. Okay? Okay. Okay.
Sit down.
Yeah? Okay. All right. So for our children's time, last time I came, I brought a special visitor. Who was that?
A panda bear.
No.
Snowball.
Snowball was a little lamb, right? And that was just to say that Jesus loves the little children, and he has a special place in his heart for them, for all of you, and for all of us. He does. Yeah, this is my treasure box. Yeah, and we have a new visitor in the treasure box today. Can you guess who it might be? A what? A snowman? No. No, it's something that comes from China. Whoops, he's not there. Whoops, he's over here. He moved. Yes, it's a panda bear, and his name is Andy. Andy. And Andy is about 3 months old, and he weighs about 10 pounds. Yeah, he's soft. You want to feel him? Okay, he's soft, yes. Okay, yeah. So, he also should have a little tail about 3 or 4 inches long, but this one doesn't have a tail. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe it got frozen off. I don't know. But panda bears, when they are born, are very tiny, very small. In fact, they're about the size of a banana.
I want to hear a song.
Oh, you want to hear a song? Well, this Andy the panda, now his name's Andy. And when he's born, he's about the size of this. Yeah, he's about the size of a banana. And he has some eyes here. But he doesn't have any hair, very, very little hair, and he's blind. He can't see. And he's pink. He's pink. This one's yellow. But this is just to say, when the baby panda is born, he's very small. He's very small. Much smaller than human babies. Yeah, this is Panda bear, when they're born, they weigh less than a pound.
Not a man.
About 3 or 4 ounces. That's all they weigh. So yes, it's banana. But this is the size of the baby when he's born, just like this. And it takes about a year before they can actually even walk very well. So they're very small. And the mother takes care of them very, very, very closely. And they feed on milk. And then after that, when they get bigger, they eat leaves from the trees. So anyway, Andy is very clever. He's very clever because he found something in our Bible that's very interesting about when we were little children. And it's from this Psalm 139 that we read earlier. And this is what it says. It says this. This is what Andy found in our Bible about when he was just a small baby. He said this. He says to God, "Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion." When he was just being formed as a new baby, God watched him. "As I was woven together in the dark of the womb, you saw me before I was born." Yeah, okay. He said, you saw me before I was born. Every day in my life was recorded in your book. Okay? And then he says this. He says, every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. See, God says, I had planned your life even before you were born. He knows all about our lives from day one right on. He knows what's going to happen. Some things are good, some things are bad, but God knows all about it. And he says, all things work together for good. Some even bad things, God has a purpose for that. So I think Andy is very, very clever. Now, Andy's going to give you something. He's going to give you a little baby blanket. And on the baby blanket, it has these verses that he found in our book, the Bible. Psalm 139, 13 through 18. See, he has these words on there. So this is a baby blanket. I'm going to give each one of you a baby blanket. You can have that one. And you can have this one. This is your baby blanket. And later, I'm going to give you a baby to put in there. Yeah. Okay, there's your. Yes. And here's your baby blanket back there. Okay. Okay. Now, in here, I have some more bananas. Okay. So this is the size of a baby panda when they're born, just like this. No hair. They can't see. Now, this one has eyes. But when they're born, they can't see. Okay, so you can wrap the baby up in your baby blanket, okay? Yeah? All right. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah. Okay, here you go.
Don't squish him.
Okay, here's yours back there. Okay. Okay, so, and this is just to remember this. God has our days all planned out. He knew us even before we were born. Right. You can find that in the good book. Andy did. So I think it gives us confidence every day to know that whatever happens, good or bad, God has a good reason for it. And he knows that it's going to happen. Now see, have you wrapped up your baby pretty much? Have you? Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, you want to hold them up now, show everybody? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, Andy says goodbye. I hope to see you again. All right. Okay, you can keep that. Yeah, that's yours.
Come on.
You can have lunch later. Okay. I work with children at Lawson Elementary School, and I love the kids. And Beilin goes to Lawson Elementary. She's in our KTC program, so I get to see her every day. She's a sweetheart. Well, we're going to take a journey, and I should probably say, well, first of all, I'm going to talk about the preparation for the journey, and then the installation for the journey, and then the recollection of the journey. So, first of all, I have to say, 大家好, which means hello, everybody. And I say 你好 is just hello. And then I can say, first of all, my name, 你的名字 is Shi Jin Song. It's like this. I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is the Romanized version of the Chinese Mandarin Hanzi, and Shi Jin Song. These are the Mandarin characters for my name. It's just a scenic picture of rock, shi, trees, Jin, and Song, water. So it's rock, trees, water, and it's kind of a peaceful setting, and that's my name in Chinese. My students called me something different. They called me Lao Wan Tong, which means childlike old man. And I kind of like that. So anyway, I'll tell you, I am an American. I am an Iowan. I was born not too far from here, near Marshalltown, Iowa, in the countryside during the winter. In fact, December 9 is my birthday. And when I was born 74 years ago, it was a snowstorm. Our house was blocked in. Doctor couldn't get in. My mother couldn't get out. And so I was born in the living room of our home with my oldest sister attending. So that was my beginnings. I was raised not in a Christian home. I was raised in a, what would I say, nowadays they would say a dysfunctional family, because my father was an alcoholic, but he was a romantic alcoholic, because we had 12 children in our family, which says something about that. So never in my wildest dreams would I ever think that eventually I would end up in China for 13 years, from 2000 to 2013. And I think my daughter told me one time, she said, "Dad, I hope you realize what a privilege you have to go to a foreign country and learn what it is to live in a different culture." She said, "I hope you appreciate it." And I have. I wouldn't exchange it for anything. But if I say that I am an American, it's like this. The Chinese have given the Americans this name. The symbol is this, if you can see it. It's a Meiguo. Meiguo means beautiful country. Now, I think that's amazing that the Chinese people designate our country as a beautiful country. And if you are a Meiguorin, which means person, an American person, then that means you are a beautiful person. And that's what they call us, Meiguorin. This is a Chinese symbol for their country, is a country of the dragon people, Zhongguorin. So anyway, just to give you a little idea about the Chinese. But in preparation, I had been given a journal by a friend of mine in Casper, Wyoming. He said to me, "Congratulations, Jerry." This is 1998. "Congratulations, Jerry. May your travels with our Creator bring you total abundant life." And that's my friend in Casper, Wyoming. I also had written, as far as a journal, keeping a journal. I'd written 6 of these while I was in China. And if you look very closely, you'll see my writing. It's very small, but I have lots of things written in there. Lots of stories about my experiences in China. But I also had written, I'd written this down from Oprah Winfrey. She said this: keep a daily journal of the things you are thankful for. It will keep you focused on the abundance in your life. And I think that's true. So I've kept a journal. It's helped me a lot to remember because I forget a lot of things. And this is my address book that I took to China. All the addresses of family and friends and everything, birthdays and anniversaries. But I wrote a verse up here when I went to China from Joshua 1:9. Joshua 1:9 said this: have not I commanded you, be strong and courageous. Don't tremble or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. I had no idea when I wrote this in there that I was going to go to China. But some interesting things happened. In 1997, I separated from my wife. Our children were grown and married, but I separated, and then the next year, 1997, she divorced, and we divorced. So I thought, what to do? What should I do now? So I went back to the University of Wyoming and got a bachelor's degree in secondary education. I could be a teacher. I thought, yes, I think this would be great. But 1 year in the public school system taught me no. I don't think I want to be a teacher in this public school system. So I decided I'm going to travel. Before, my ex traveled to South America, to Europe, to Canada, across the USA. I usually stayed home and worked. So I thought, I think I'm going to travel now. I'm single. I'm free. So I signed up for volunteer service with Peace Corps. And they gave me 3 choices of where you would like to serve. China was my first choice. Then it was Western Europe. And then it was the Pacific Islands. I thought maybe this would be great. This very romantic place. But they said, we think you'd be best suited for China. And sure enough, because of my family background, I was raised in rural Iowa over by Marshalltown. And so where they sent me in western China was rural. Lots of countryside people. So I felt right at home amongst the people there. So anyway, I should also say that growing up as a young person, we were raised to be decent. If you used the Lord's name or used any cuss words, my mother had a bar of soap handy and cleaned out our mouths. Yeah, you have a dirty mouth, young man. We're going to clean it up right now. Come here. And if we disobeyed or if we talked back, either we got a spanking, a good spanking, or we were reprimanded sharply. So we were taught to be decent. I would say my father was raised Quaker over by La Grande and Montour and Gilman. You can find Friends churches over in that neighborhood. Very strict, and he didn't fit. My dad didn't fit, but he felt he did fit in the bar and had lots of friends that accepted him just for who he was. So he became an alcoholic that way. But as a young person, about 16, my oldest brother came home from the service. He had been in the Korean War, and he came home, and he and his wife attended church with their children, and he had a dairy farm over by Tama. He said, if you will come and work for me, then I will take care of your tuition for the university. I want you to go to university. So I went to live in their home, and he said, well, there's one other thing. Every Sunday, you must go to church with us. I was, oh, bummer. I have to go to church. And so we went to church, and it was during a communion service in the church that I was convicted of my sin, because I had many sins. I knew what they were. God knew what they were. And so I confessed Jesus as my Savior and trusted Him as my Lord. And since that time, He has stuck with me through thick and thin, and even from America to China, he's been with me. So that kind of gives you a little bit of background. My oldest sister, who helped my mother give birth to me, she said, Gerald, if you go to China, we may never see you again. you'll be taken into custody and they'll put you in jail and send you off to some labor camp. You know how it is in China. They're communists. And she said, don't you know that just 10 years ago that they had a protest in Beijing and all the people were protesting around Tiananmen Square, and Deng Xiaoping brought all the tanks in, and you probably remember the picture of the lone Chinese person is a hand up against the tank, and who knows what became of him. I'm pretty sure he disappeared. But she said they turned those tanks and those shells onto those people. And when I was in China, I found out, probably about 700, 800 people were massacred. They came in with trucks and threw the bodies into the trucks and took them away. The parents never saw them again. They're gone. History. She says, don't you know that? These terrible things could happen to you as well. We may never see you again. But I didn't think about that too much. I just thought about the adventure. It's going to be so exciting. And so when I flew from Chicago to Beijing, it was about 16 hours, a long trip. And then from Beijing, we went to Chengdu, the western part of China, Sichuan province, the capital. And from there, they assigned me to a little city called Panchihua in the southern part of Sichuan province. It's like above Hanoi and between Hanoi and Chengdu. Right in there, it's mountainous. Panchihua, it's a steel-producing city in the mountains. Chairman Mao founded the city for producing steel. And it was, they said, we're sorry it's such a small city that we're sending you to. Only 1.5 million people. So there were lots of people there, I tell you what. But we were under suspicion by the communist government because they said, well, why would the USA provide free service to our country, no cost to us, but a cost to them? Doesn't make sense. They must be here to democratize the Chinese people, or maybe they have come to foment some protest against our country and our government. So they watched us very closely. But all this time, I was a minority in a majority Chinese population. And I was I wasn't scared, I wasn't afraid, but I was a little hesitant, and so much to do. Learn the language, eat a different kinds of food, be amongst a different culture. It was all a little bit intimidating. So they sent us for training in a little town, well, actually it was a big city, Leshan, Sichuan province. Along a river, two rivers met together, and right in front of the two rivers where they met together, the water was turbulent. Then there was a huge 90-foot Buddha statue that had been carved out in the rock in the mountain. Beautiful, beautiful, 90 feet tall, was right there. And people could be, during the daytime, they'd swim down the river and go to the shore. It was a beautiful place. And the university there had at one time been a Presbyterian school for girls. But the communist government had closed it, and now it was just a university. But that's what I was told. It was a Presbyterian school for girls, and that was now used as a university. But I was a little bit overwhelmed with all that I had to do and learn. So one morning, very early in the morning, I went for a walk, and I went down to the river. And there was a haze over the river, and the sun was just coming up, and there was kind of like pink ripples across the horizon. Very quiet, no one was there. And I sang a song. I was kind of like singing to God for help. And it goes something like this, if you'll excuse me. Gentle shepherd, come and feed me, for I need your strength from day to day. Gentle shepherd, come and lead me, for I need your help along the way. There's no other I can turn to who can help me, lead me along the way. Gentle shepherd, come and feed me, for I need your strength along the way. Amen. So, I was trusting him. But if you're too vocal about your faith, they'll send you home. And some of our Peace Corps workers were. They were sent home because they were trying to propagate or proselytize some of the Christians. And that was done. I was an ambassador for the U.S. government. But of course, I'm also a Christian. So what do you do? What do you do? You love the people. You love them. And they knew that. They knew that. When I finished my term for 2 years with 50 other Peace Corps workers, they were talking to each other and they said, we've been here for 2 years. We don't have one single Chinese friend. Well, when I left Panchihua, there were about 50 Chinese people that came to say goodbye to me. And I went to Shanghai to teach English for the Wall Street English, which is an American company, premier company from the USA. And I told some of the students, if you want to have a better chance for your life and your career, then you can come to Shanghai. It's very expensive for you to come by yourself, but you can live in my apartment, and I will sponsor and I will help you. Well, several of the students, especially one who is I think my number one student, I kind of like sponsored him. I call him my son. He calls me Jerry Dad. Probably 50 of the students call me Jerry Dad or Grandpa. But his name is Tui Xiaohui. Tui Xiaohui. I've been to visit his home in the countryside. His name was Marvy. I call him Marvy. Well, Marvy and I played basketball together almost every day. 2 or 3 hours, and then the Chinese students would come to my home and they would fix a meal. We'd have Chinese food together in the living room around the table, be about 6 or 8 of us. Well, this was very suspicious to the Chinese Communist Party, and they would come knocking on the door. What are you doing in there? What's happening? Well, we're having dinner. Come on, you can join us. No, I don't want to join you. Okay, and then he'd leave. So they did that several times because they were suspicious. Why should American have close friendship with Chinese people? It just doesn't seem right. And so they tried to separate the Chinese students from me. Say, Jerry is a teacher, you're the students, you shouldn't be mixing together, traveling together, talking together, playing basketball. It's not right. So they called Tui Xiaohui into the office. And the PLA, which is the People's Liberation Army, and the PSB, which is Public Service Bureau, and also the heads of the communist government, they cornered this young Chinese student. He's 18 years old. And they talked to him for 5 hours. And they said to him, what are you saying to Jerry? And what is Jerry saying to you? What's happening? And in the end, they said, you are a traitor to your country because you have this friendship with the American. So Marvy came running over to my apartment, pounding on the door, Jerry, let me in. And he ran into the living room, threw the blanket over his head. He said, Jerry, they called me a traitor to my country. I'm not a traitor. I love my country. What's wrong with them? And so he cried. But Tui Xiaohui is a very good boy, and I love him like my own, really. He's been here with his wife to visit me, and he came to our family reunion over by Marshalltown, and I'm so honored by that. Well, I had in Panchihua, where I was assigned, I taught at the trade school. I also taught at the Pengong Steel Company, the technicians and the engineers. I had a class with them. I also had a class with Chinese teachers who were teaching English. Most of the Chinese teachers teaching English would teach English in Chinese. Now, how does that work? How can you teach English in Chinese? But they did, because they couldn't speak the English words. Well, anyway, I had some very good experiences with the teachers. One teacher, her name was Catherine, a young, frail little gal, but very spirited, very spirited. She's 21 years old. She told me, she said, Jerry, my dad is a member of the Communist Party in the capital of Chengdu, and I told him that I would like to join the party because if you join the party, you have more benefits. You have more benefits for jobs, and eventually when you retire, you get a stipend each month from the government. Other people don't. Only those who belong to the party. There's probably out of 1.3 billion people in China, only 60 million are members of the Communist Party. It's just a small minority that controls everybody else. So the father said, don't you dare become a member of the Communist Party, because if you do, you get in the party, you'll find out things, you'll find out a lot of things, but then it's going to be too late for you to get out. He says, that's what happened to me. He says, I do not want you to join the party. Well, Catherine, she didn't join, but she was very spirited. I really enjoyed Catherine because she said, we were talking one day about some women getting attacked by men, which seems to be a subject here in the United States right now. But she says, you know what I would do if some man came to me and tried to attack me or get very close to me? She says, you know what I would do? I said, what would you do, Catherine? She said, I would kick him you know where. Yeah. So I thought, this is a good gal. I didn't have to worry about that. But she was very interesting. She asked me one day, she said, Jerry, now if I offend you by saying this, I hope not, but she said, Jerry, do you often sleep in the nude? I said, what? What'd you say, Catherine? She says, do you often sleep in the nude? I said, Catherine, do you know what that is? She says, well, every day it's so hot down here in Panchihua that at noontime we take a nap. So we take a nap at the noon time. But she was not saying noon, she was saying nude. So I had explained to her, she got all red, she's all red, and very embarrassed, but she was just a lovely girl. I loved her. And I had another student in my engineering class. He sat right in the front, all eyes, very intent to learn the English language, very good student, probably about 28 years old. He was married, of course, and had a little boy named Woody, and I was invited to their homes a number of times and even stayed there overnight. But he was one of my best students, I think. His name, Zhujiang. Zhujiang, I called him Joe. And one day, Joe, because he knew I was caring about the Chinese people, he was impressed with that. He said, Jerry, I would like to be a Christian. But he said, I don't know anything about it. He said, I don't know God at all. But he said, can you help me? He said, do you have a Bible? Well, I had a Bible. And I gave him the Bible, and also I explained in there what you need to know to become a Christian. I said, it's not a matter of church, it's not a matter of doing penance, it's a matter of believing. Christ died for your sin. We all have faults. Everybody is a sinner. And Christ died for our sins on the cross. He paid the debt we could never pay. And if we trust Him as our Savior, we are born again into His family, just like 1 John 1:12 says, as many as received Him, to them gave the right to be called the children of God. So Joe, he did this on his own. He did this on his own. And as an after occurrence, he said, well, you're sponsoring this student and that student and that student. He said, I want to give you some money to help them. He says, Marvy has a clogged nose. Or they call it, is it rhinus? I don't know what it's called. Rhinus something? Anyway, he had to have surgery, but he had no money. So he gave some money. He said, another one of your students has TB. And they have no money for medicine. The Chinese traditional medicine is not working. He's going to die. He said, I will give you some money so he can get the Western medicine to cure the TB. And he did. So I think Joe, he still keeps in touch with me. His son's now in university. I think he and his wife are going to come here to visit me eventually. And I hope that you have a chance to meet him. He's a wonderful guy. Well, what can I say? I had the students come to Shanghai, the ones that were the hardest working, the ones who really wanted to excel and do their very best. They came and lived in my apartment. I said, okay, if you live in my apartment, there's 2 rules, only 2 rules. One of them is, if you go out at night, I want you to come home. I don't want you to stay out all night. I want you to be in the home. And another thing is, if you have a girlfriend, I don't want you to bring the girlfriend home to stay overnight in the apartment. It's not going to be allowed. So those are the 2 rules, not too heavy. But Henry, my one student, he's 18, 19, came from the countryside close to Chengdu. Very handsome young man. He's been here to visit me here in Shanghai, in Des Moines, last year at this very time. And anyway, he was if you excuse me, I'll say he was a virgin, 18, 19 years old. Does this happen in USA? Oh yeah, I'm sure it does. I'm just, seems like, yeah, it's so uncommon anymore. But he was a virgin, and his first experience with a girlfriend, I was gone for a week, and he brought home a girlfriend from work and watching videos. And when I came back, of course, I was cleaning the apartment, and there were these long hairs all over the floor. And so I said, what's happened while I've been gone? There's these long hairs all over the floor while I'm cleaning up. He said, I have no idea. I have no idea what's happened there. So then I said, well, something's really strange happened. So then later he says, you know what, Jerry, I have to say you. He said, I brought the girl home from work. We're watching videos, and things just got out of control. So then after that, I had to keep a close watch on Henry. You know what I'm saying? And he had girlfriend after girlfriend. So then eventually he married a girl from the Philippines who was an English teacher. But Henry, I said, okay, Henry, you're trying to bring girls home at night and have them stay with you overnight. I said, I'm going to have to ask you to find your own place. He, what? I had to find my own place? What are you going to do, throw me out? I said, well, if this continues, you're going to have to move out. I can't let you stay here in the apartment. This is one of the rules that you're breaking. So after a while, are you going to find an apartment now? No, I've been looking, but I just haven't found anything. I said, well, if you don't find something, I'm going to take all your stuff and move it to the place where you're working. And indeed I did. He said, well, Jerry, I sure hope you're happy throwing me out like that. I said, well, I'm not throwing you out really. I said, I'm giving you your freedom. You can do what you want with your own time and with your own money, but I'm not going to sponsor it. You know, you can have girlfriends, but you're not going to break the rules of our home. So anyway, I had to be a father, a mother, a counselor, a doctor, everything, a grandmother. I had to be a grandmother. How many of you are grandmothers? Okay, I had to be the grandmother to these kids. And I loved them. I love these kids, and I still do. But anyway, Marvy, the one that I've told you about, one morning, he came to my bedroom, and he sat down on the bed beside me and said, Jerry Dad, wake up. I said, what's going on? He said, Dad, I have something to say. And he put his hand on my chest like this, and he was patting my chest like this. He said, Jerry Dad, you know, he says, in the future, we may never be together like this again. He says, you may go one way. He says, you may even go back to USA, and I'll stay here in China. I may be living here in Shanghai, I don't know. But he said, we're going to be separated. He said, I think what we should do, we should cherish the moments we have together. What do you think about that? I was moved to tears. To have a Chinese young man say that to me with so much affection, I was moved. He still loves me. He still cares about me. He called me just this week. He called me and talked to me about his life over there. He and Henry are both working for the Australian consulate in Shanghai. They have good jobs. Another boy that I sponsored is a doctor. Another one is a manager in an American company. So I did make a difference, and there are people in China now. Some of my students would say to me, in fact, I said to some ladies this morning, I said, "Oh, Jerry, you're going out to preach today, are you?" I said, "Well, actually, I'm not really preaching. I'm just sharing some of my experiences while I was in China." And I said, actually, religiously, I had more freedom to talk about faith in Jesus in China than I do have here in USA. What? What do you mean by that? I said, well, my students in the classroom, they could ask me and say, what about Christmas? Is it about Santa Claus or is it about Jesus? I says, well, it's both. I says, you have the secular. I says, we enjoy Santa Claus and gifts and things like that. But I said, it's also about Jesus. When he was born, he was wrapped in swaddling clothes, which were burial clothes. He knew what he had come for. He had come on a mission to die on the cross for the sins of the world. It was a love mission. So you could talk about that in the classroom to the Chinese students. Can you do that in the USA? No. You can't even say we're going to have Christmas break. Now it's winter break. And Easter, is that about the bunny, the Easter bunny, or is that about Jesus on the cross? Well, it's both. It's the secular and it's also the sacred. So you could talk to them about, yes, he died on the cross for the sins of the world. He was buried and he rose again the third day. You can talk about that in China, but not too easily here in USA in the classrooms because you may offend someone. You may offend someone, that's what they say. So just don't talk about it. So it's kind of hush-hush. Well, what do I remember? I remember that in China, I had kind of like a celebrity status. If the Chinese people saw you coming, and there were hordes of Chinese people, 1.3 billion people, every place you turn, you would see them. You'd see them everywhere. And they would say, Lao Wai, Lao Wai, which was kind of an announcement, foreigner, which is, some of the Peace Corps students would be offended by that. I know I'm a foreigner. You don't have to announce it to everybody. Well, I didn't really care. I am a foreigner, so what? So I kind of gained a celebrity status. Lao Wai, here comes the Lao Wai Jerry. And I was even taken by a company to make commercials. They thought, well, if they have a Lao Wai sponsoring this product, then the people are going to buy it surely, because it's American that's sponsoring it. So I had done about 3 or 4 different commercials for a company, which would be on TV. So I was kind of like a movie star. Anyway, it was kind of a beautiful privilege I had. Crowds of people. If you travel during National Day or New Year's, all the students from the big city, they want to go home. So the train stations, the bus stations were just flooded with people. It was just like a madhouse. It was a madhouse. And under Shanghai, there are at least 14, maybe 15 lines of subways underneath the city. It's like a maze. And hordes of people all over. And so if you get on the subway, you'll be pushed into the subway, and sometimes you'll be pushed out of the subway because people are hurrying, going here and there. So it's quite an experience to be amongst so many people. I'm a people person, so I didn't care. I like people. But one time, being pushed into the subway by a horde of people, there was a young boy. He was pushing me, but he was also trying to search my pockets. So I was telling the students, I said, either this man that was pushing me into the subway was a thief, or maybe he was gay because he was rubbing my backside. I didn't know what he was. But anyway, it's kind of interesting experiences. What do I remember? I remember that the pollution was horrible. The doctor who took care of me with my heart attack, he says, yes, this pollution in Shanghai probably could be accounted for a lot of the reason why you had the heart attack, because that fine dust gets into your lungs, gets into your blood, goes to your heart, and stays there. So indeed, I did have a heart attack, and now I have 5 stents in my heart to keep it going. So don't worry, nothing's going to happen today. But anyway, that's what I remember. Yeah, the pollution was, and noise pollution. One morning I laid in bed, and I listened to the horns honking. You know, cars are kind of like a new thing in China, so people love to honk the horn. So one morning I counted. I said, okay, 1 hour, I'm going to count how many horns I hear honking. And I counted 70. 70 times the horns were honking outside the apartment building. People love the horns. It's noise pollution. It just really gets on your nerves. Poverty, huge amount of poverty, especially in the countryside. My students lived in poverty. The parents lived in poverty. I went to their homes, and someone said, you better feel that it's a high privilege. They invite you to their homes because most Chinese don't want you to know how poorly they live. But they were really, really good to me. They gave me the best food, took care of me, just like it was beautiful. I had to take a shower by the pig pen and pour water over my head. And the windows are all open. Neighbors could come over and, oh, the Lawai is over there taking a shower. And then if you need to go to the bathroom, there was a sewer pit underneath the pig pen, and there was an open space with 2 boards slid across. You'd stand on the 2 boards, and that's where you go to the bathroom, right there with the pigs. So it's quite an experience sleeping in a room where on the other side you could hear the pigs like that. It's quite an experience, but I lived in the countryside here in Iowa, not quite that way, but it was pretty close. But they were superstitious. If you see skyscrapers, and there's many of them in Shanghai, they do not have a 13th or a 4th floor because they figure it's bad luck. And if you've ever seen a Chinese calendar, it's rotated on the basis of 12 animals. And if you're born a certain year, then that's the year that you're born in. So I was born in 1943. So my year is the year of the sheep, And they say, well, that year, that's your year, then you should be wearing red underwear for good luck. So of course I did. In fact, if you really want to know, I have on red underwear today. So, for good luck. Jerry, we didn't need to know that. Okay. Don't give a clock as a gift because it keeps time. It means your time is running out. So don't give that as a gift. It's bad luck. And one day we were swimming with the students in the river, and it's kind of like rocky, and the students were lifting up rocks and finding a little black fuzzy worm. And it's worth a lot of money in the countryside. It's worth about $8. And that's a lot of money for Chinese people. So they were collecting these red worms, these old black worms, and they were like black on the outside, but inside was white protein. They said, Jerry, these are an aphrodisiac. Very valuable. If you eat these, what a difference it will make in your life. So they said, Jerry, we want to honor you as the foreigner. We want you to eat several of these worms. So they took them and they dipped them in egg, and then they dipped them in flour, and then put them in hot oil, and they cooked them. And I ate, well, they're about the size of my thumb, about like that. And I ate 2 of them. They're watching me very closely. What's going to happen to Jerry? This is an aphrodisiac. Do you know what that is? I think so. Okay. So anyway, I ate 2 of them, and that night, I laid awake, waiting for something to happen. I laid awake. I couldn't sleep. And you know what? Nothing happened. It didn't work. But they have these superstitions about that. And also, if you grind up antlers, then you take this. It's an aphrodisiac also. They had a lot of herbs that you're supposed to take. Certain vegetables are especially like an aphrodisiac. So a lot of people were eating things, but it didn't make a difference to me. Well, I have a few things here on the table. This is Lonely Planet. If you've ever seen these, they have Lonely Planets to help you with your travels, whatever country you might go to. Whole mess of Lonely Planets for every country in the world. But in China, they had all all the lonely planets for all the other countries in the world, but you could never find this. You can never find this. And you know why? Because in the front, it gives a history of China, and it talks about Tiananmen Square. It talks about the protests and how the people were slaughtered by the soldiers, by Deng Xiaoping. It says, shoot them down, kill all of them. And the protest was over. Well, they don't allow people to have this book. I have another book here. This is called, it's a Chinese book written by an English woman who is Chinese. She graduated from Oxford University. She's a doctorate and teaches in the universities in London. But she wrote this book called Wild Swans. It's the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter, and how they lived through the change of government with Chairman Mao, and how Chairman Mao treated them and their fellow countrymen. It's they don't allow this book in China either because it tells the truth. So that's a very interesting book. Probably can find that at the bookstore. But it's a very interesting book. I love that. Once I started reading, I can't stop. This one is another one. Hudson Taylor is a pioneer missionary in China. He wore the traditional Chinese clothes. He wore the pigtail. He also dressed like a Chinese person, but he had lots of converts, especially in Shanghai. When I was in Shanghai, there's a famous walkway along the river, the Huangpu River, called the Bund. The Bund. All the buildings that were built in the 1920s by foreign governments, including the USA, it's a very famous walk. Anyway, very close to there was a beautiful church, big church. But when Chairman Mao took over, just like he did with the hospital, he put an iron gate across the front of the church. It's closed, and he made it a warehouse. While I was there one night, there's flames up in the sky. The church was burnt to the ground. It was gone. But this man here, Hudson Taylor, was there in the late 1800s to serve in China. A godly person. Lots of things happened. His children were died and buried there. His one wife was dead and buried there. But he persisted and made a real contribution to the country of China. So that's pretty much what I had to say. Possibly some of you would have some questions. It's a little bit past 10:30, but if you have some questions, you can ask me now or ask me later when we're downstairs. Okay? So anyway, thank you very much. I hope I didn't ramble too much. My purpose was not to offend anybody. Jerry, you said some things were not quite appropriate, you know. Watch it from now on. Okay, but I'm just telling you the truth. So we can turn in our hymnals now. These books here, 28, Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. Okay. 2 bottles of wine. They're covered with wine covers. These are qipao. These are qipaos, the traditional dress of the Chinese people. If you watch the news, you would have watched our First Lady, Melania Trump, wearing a very beautiful qipao in Beijing. She was a knockout, I thought. Beautiful lady. These are qipaos, and this is a drink called baijiu, made from rice wine. It's 67%. And if you want to be a friend to Chinese people, if you want to make business with Chinese people, you must drink this. You must drink it. They'll pour it into a little cup like this and say, "Ganbei," which means drink all of it. And you just take it and throw it back to the back of your throat, and that's it. Now you're hitched and you're friends forever. But if you don't, whoa, they could be angry. But anyway, I don't know what other Americans do, but I said, well, just give me some Coca-Cola. Because it's very strong stuff. Well, anyway, for benediction, I'm going to read from Jude, verse